All right. Let's right. So should we start with the octopus stuff and just see where we ended up?
Yeah. So I see an octopus merged section. What are we looking for?
The RGW column over to the right. The purple tag, if you click on it, it'll expand out. But that's the purple one was the stuff that we'd originally planned for octopus.
Okay.
So I'm
Um,
not sure if some of this stuff merged or not.
right. The first one, async request flow, a little bit more progress has been made there. Atom, the objector work was delayed, and that's fine, but we can build on that and get to the thread
Okay.
consolidation part.
Okay.
So should we just retag things as specific if we don't move them out?
Yeah. 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 I'll adjust it. Okay. GC.
Yes, that happened.
STS.
Um,
Seems like
Not
this
too
one was always
familiar
there,
with
but
that
there's
one.
like so many facets of STS. I can't keep track of what's what. Yeah.
Right. I think some web identity work was done. Not sure what the keystone part was.
Adam around. He's the one who would know, right? That Marcus.
I think Preetha has been doing most of it.
Okay. This new index strategy that hasn't progressed too much, right?
Right. We've been sidetracked on that.
Reshard test cases.
Nothing there.
The reshard is in the process of getting redesigned anyway, right? In order to behave with multi-site.
Yes, in some ways. And some test coverage is going to be important to catch
Part of
regressions
that.
there. So we could fold it in.
Should we just drop that card because there's already a dynamic resharding and multi-site
Yeah, that makes
one there?
sense.
Okay. Life cycle expiration tests.
Important, but not something that anybody has wanted to work on.
Okay. Um, okay. Okay. So how do you want to do this? Do you want to focus on the cards, or do you want to talk about in general what the plan is, what the big items are? There's this whole discussion around the multi-site roadmap. And the doc that you shared a couple of weeks ago. That probably needs to get translated into actual
Agreed, yeah.
tasks.
Um, yeah, that's going to be the part that I'm most familiar with. So if you want to start there, I think that would make sense.
Okay. The Google Doc.
I don't think the Google Doc is public.
All right. Well, this is your show, so how do you wanna proceed?
Sure. Just I'll add notes to the Etherpad about the different pieces. Big one is dynamic reshard. There's some data sync optimizations and some caching of sync status. With respect to OMAP offload, it's getting data logs, metadata logs, and bucket index logs out of OMAP. So that'll involve
Index.
resharding of data and metadata logs, which is completely separate from the bucket index resharding. I think that covers the big stuff. There was one other kind of refactoring topic that isn't really a deliverable. Still not sure where that fits in.
That's the async refactoring.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the breakdown kind of from the reshard perspective. But I know that Yehuda has his own goals that I think we should probably try to capture here.
Yeah, you could just here.
Yeah, that's also basically under the umbrella of refactoring. We need like circulated document, also not currently not public yet, about how I see a way that we can simplify or compartmentalize some of the sync operations that would be in line with later on different backends that we could plug in instead of the gateway, or putting different kinds of backends on one hand. On the other hand, making it easier and more clearly when dealing, clearer when dealing with resharding issues, or pushing some of the logic to outside of the sync process directly. So if you have a module that would be responsible of fetching the data, a module responsible for actually syncing the data, and finding commonalities between the different sync types, that is the metadata data and the bucket syncs. So that's pretty much it. There is a multi-stage roadmap that I put there that makes it so that it's a gradual change, so that we don't really need to do everything at once. So I think it starts with mostly how to fetch the data, where the difference is that instead of the sync coroutines or processes, threads, whatever, that do the operation, instead of them going directly to the remote and fetch the data, they use some kind of a module that is responsible for fetching the data, and it uses and the source side also is providing a way to provide the data so that it also keeps track of who is fetching the data, and then it can do some different trimming, or the trimming process can be then simplified or changed. So, but again, it's not necessarily we do everything. It's starting at doing some changes around fetching the data, and then hopefully that allows us to clean things up, and who knows, we might be able to consolidate everything. The one thing that I do think we can do is, at least for each sync type, is merging the incremental and full sync to a single sync logic, so that the full sync and the incremental are going to do pretty much the same. Like they're going to be the same code. The trans just, it's going to be multi-stage code that in each stage it fetches the data a bit differently, or uses a module to fetch the data a bit differently, or the data is fed from the source a bit differently. So depending on how things are done. So that's pretty. These are my thoughts about it. And
I think a couple of the big goals to get out of this are the ability to run multiple zones in a single gateway to be able to sync locally. And another is from the abstraction to be able to get event streams from non-RGW sources like cloud.
right. There's another thing, by the way, semi-related, is multiple sync modules in a zone. But that's really depending on how we do things.
Okay, well, I mean, we can just, this is a pretty short list, but I think each of these items is pretty significant. What do we want to do here? Do you want to talk about any of these in detail? I don't know what the scope of, like, this dynamic reshard stuff, it feels like we've been talking about for the last year. Is there a working design for it now, or?
Yeah, I've shared the most detail about dynamic reshard on the SFDevel list, and there's a doc that's merged in the source tree for the design.
Okay. What's the level of effort around that? Is this a 6-month project? 1 month project?
Hopefully a couple months.
Yeah. Okay.
So what? Just one thing I think lacking, Cody, might be the sort of the APIs and the UX design workflows and UI work that's required. I mean, any thoughts there, or is there anything written down on that?
I think not for the reshard, right? This is just behind the scenes, something that should work but doesn't.
Right. Dynamic reshard is something that just happens automatically in the background, and so there isn't really any admin intervention for it. there are some ways that you can see what's in the queue to be resharded, if that's interesting for the dashboard.
I think it is,
Probably.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
Also, if you can control like when reshard is allowed, I think that's also something that is probably interesting for the dashboard.
Yeah, there's probably like a whole topic here about what is currently visible in the dashboard as far as state and what should be, or not even the dashboard, but the perf counters or any other command line tools. I don't know how people normally monitor any of this.
Multi-site can have a lot of interesting inputs to the dashboard with respect to how far the destinations have caught up with the source. Are they lagging behind, and how far are they lagging behind?
Yeah. Is there anything there right now for monitoring multi-sync?
Nope,
Multi-site?
for now. For multi-site, there is some really rudimentary stuff, right? I haven't looked at it recently, but it's like what's the name of the zone or stuff like that, but not really anything like sync status or stuff like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. So this seems like this would be at the top of the list for a customer as far as, well, beyond it just working. As for the dashboard stuff, it's like just being able to see it, see the current status. Go from there. Must be on your list, Jeff?
Well, I know Ernesto and Alfonso were not here. I would have to discuss with them, but I know we've had some discussions on what we would require, for API needs. How is that going to translate into, what type of workflows do we want? I mean, I still know there's a lot of outstanding questions. So if we want the dashboard to go along with it, I think we have action items to really help define that. It's so.
I need a follow-up discussion.
Yeah,
dashboard
sure.
team to
I'll see
set
if
what the specific goals are.
Yeah, I'll send a note to Ernesto or Alfonso, see if they can come and address that stuff. I'm surprised they're not here.
Yeah, okay. I do think that the work here has been scoped out and agreed on both sides, but currently the blocker work in RGW is being worked on by an intern, and we're not making the progress there that we need to.
Recipe for success.
So we need to fix that.
Okay. Okay, so dynamic reshard, top of the list, documents there. I think everything is sort of in shape there. This data sync optimizations topic, this is like the sync fairness and the per bucket shard leases. So I see this in the internal document.
There's a PR already for that, right? Is there any more work supposed to go into it, basically?
Was there one thing that didn't get covered? I don't quite remember. Sync fairness wasn't in the scope of this. It was its own thing, but there's a little bit of interaction.
Okay. We'll put that up on the board. Is that pull request the entirety of it, or is that just part of it that's missing?
That is it in its entirety.
Okay, cool. Okay, and then the OMAP offload up on the board. That's defined it, but that's also pretty well defined, right? There's the class FIFO stuff is there. Is it merged? There are tests
Not
around it?
merged, but there's a PR now by Adam that takes my work and adds the async stuff to it and other changes. So it'll be ready soon.
Okay. And then once that's there, then the bucket index and the other logs can be transitioned to use it.
Yeah, I think the backward compatibility, making the transition is going to be a little complicated, but
Yeah.
we're going to start by just getting it in without that stuff and then add it in.
And it's going to be used in 3 places: the bucket index, and then the metadata and data logs.
That's right. I think we'll do metadata and data logs first because bucket index is a little more complicated. It has to fit into the whole bucket index transaction logic. So it doesn't have to happen early on.
Okay. But first step is just to get the class FIFO stuff in there and with tests and all that.
Yeah, I didn't know that Adam opened a PR for it yet. I'm excited to see it.
Cool. Okay. And then the async refactoring, this is just the same ongoing performance optimization work, right? So it's the Rados piece that needs to merge first, and then presumably a bunch of follow-on RGW fixes. That's what Adam's mostly been doing.
Not necessarily. Where I was going here was just being able to integrate the multi-site syncs coroutines with the Boost ASIO ones so that you can spawn a stackful coroutine within that and share memory because it's single-threaded. And if we're able to do that, then we can call into all of the places that support an optional yield thing, and we don't have to send work out to a separate thread pool for it.
So this would be described as multi-site async.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I consider this more of a stretch goal than anything. I don't think any of the other pieces really depend on it.
All right, I won't tag it for Pacific then.
Yeah.
And users don't directly care. It's just refactoring.
Exactly.
Okay. And then there's this you're just looking at, which is also refactoring. What about zipper? Everything's out there.
Yeah. Is Dan here? I think he's maybe out. But he's been making good progress on the last piece, which is the object abstraction. So that didn't get in for Octopus, but we don't have any features using it yet. But let's see. So I think the first couple things that we're going to get out of this are, first of all, a database backend instead of Rados. So work has been ongoing on that piece, just waiting for the interfaces to call into.
Okay.
And the second thing, Dan is planning to have like a policy layer built into the abstraction here, potentially calling into Lua. I'm not sure exactly whether that comes first or not. But I think that will be really interesting when it comes. And then future work is to support things like tiering to cloud, for example, or proxying to another service.
Yeah, okay. I think the policy in the
what's in the Pacific time frame though?
yeah.
Yeah,
We probably need to can put it.
good question.
What would be the minimum achievement like that we can safely say that it's gonna be there and it's gonna add something other than code reshuffle.
The proxy
Yep.
thing is one that stands out as seemingly being simple, but providing a real tangible
Right.
feature.
So maybe if you put that as a goal for Pacific.
What do you think, Casey?
It's hard for me to say. I would have to check with Dan and Matt.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think we're in microsurface. Is Robin even here?
I don't see him. I'm interested to hear what that's about, but we can talk about it later.
Yeah. Okay. What about this RGW to RBD bridge?
Yeah, that's something I threw in there. And this is something I pulled Casey aside for back in DEFCON Barcelona last year as a way to expose RBD snapshots via like some designated bucket in RGW. So basically integrate librd into RGW, natively expose and provide access to RBD snapshots from RGW, and then longer term, it'd be great if we could then like integrate it with necessary hooks to hook it into multi-site, so that multi-site knows that hey, there's a new snapshot available, so it knows how to sync it over, or integrate with Nuba or something like that, so you can have data policies about retention of RBD backup images and things like that. But yeah, Casey mentioned last year that it's like, well, everything's being like rewritten right now, so it's not a good time to put anything in to RGW.
It sounds like Zipper Zipper plugin for RBD would be.
So what is Zipper? Because there's no background on that I can find. Is there like a document that describes Zipper? It seems like a need to know thing. Like,
Casey, you wanna talk about Zipper a bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially a really high level S3 object / bucket abstraction, currently just positioned between our request handling ops and the calls into Rados. So it's kind of just zipping across at that level so that we can plug in alternate backends or.
Okay, so this is what you were talking about last year then when you said like you're refactoring something to add multiple backends. That's Zipper.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Zipper being an RGW internal unique like term for the project, not a external piece of technology that you're integrating.
Right.
Correct. Yeah. So it's just internal architecture.
Name.
I think Zipper would make this project really easy, but it doesn't necessarily have to happen first if people are interested in working on it. But in terms of Zipper, it's always good to have extra use cases to think about while we're firming up interfaces.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine wanting to have a Zipper plugin that does this for RBD, where you have a bucket that's mapped to I guess, a pool namespace combination or something. And then also have one that's a zipper plugin that uses libzfs that just exports a directory in the file system.
Or it would export what, like ZFS snapshots too, right? And it can basically also dynamically export like a tar format or something like that to provide access to it. Can build it on the fly.
Yeah, perhaps.
That would be cool.
That would be cool. Yeah.
But yeah, so like the snapshot thing, these snapshots, we would want not only just like, here's the full snapshot dump, but we also want to have like a way to basically expose programmatically like arbitrary deltas of snapshots, so that if you want to do backup policies, you don't have to like necessarily copy a full like 1 terabyte object. You can say like, well, I'll take my 1 terabyte object once a month or whatever, and then I'll do like incremental diffs between there and determine what I'm going to copy. We would export virtual objects that would expose all those different permutations.
Yeah. It sounds to me like something that would be straightforward to do and design and implement once the zipper abstraction is in place. But until then, it sort of might. Sure. But
yeah, I think the multi-site angle is going to need a little more thought.
Yeah.
Just implementing this as a zipper, as its own zipper backend thing, we wouldn't have like the RGW bucket index probably, and that's where we currently keep the change logs for sync.
Yeah, no, understand about that. Like that's why I said we could kick those things down the road, but it'd be good to plan for them.
Yeah, agreed.
Or especially like there was the one with like the RGW service that like puts out like bus events or things like that, so that you could hook an external process up to say like, oh, I see a new object created, go pull it or something like that. Polling the bucket to say like, hey, there are any new snapshots created.
I think part of the refactoring that I was talking about would cover that angle eventually. That would allow you to plug in different backends for multi-site, and you need to write some plugin for that, but it would then be relatively easy to add these use cases.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe when Dan's available, he can send an update on where things stand with zipper. Maybe just a list or something. But I don't have any sense of is how close this is before we have sort of unlock all these other items.
Yeah, my understanding, he's already done like the bucket and user abstractions, and he's working on the object one. And I think once we have that, then we'll have kind of the full abstraction to plug in something else. And I think the database backend will be the first thing that we do that with.
Why not the RBD one?
But I don't think it's too far off.
Personally, I'm fine working on the RBD one. If the layers are in.
Cool.
Right.
Yeah, I'll have Dan share some more info about that.
Okay. What's the goal with the database backend?
Just a proof of concept for an alternate,
okay.
As far as I know.
Okay. This is the bucket index, just dumping it in like SQL or something, or is it like a
Exactly.
Okay. Okay.
Backend index and the data itself, right? I would assume.
Yeah.
So yeah, if if there's no good reason why to do a database backend, it would seem to me that RBD is also a good candidate for proof of concept to start with,
Yeah,
because
or SFFS. That's would be a useful feature.
Yep.
Well,
Seems
yeah,
like
for
if we
SFFS,
wanted,
if they get into multi-site, then you basically solved this SFFS multi-site sync problem.
yeah, maybe. um,
some aspects of it.
yeah,
The poor man's rsync approach. You expose like snapshot deltas.
yep. Okay. So I guess there are a couple other things going on. There's the Rook support for multi-site that Ollie's working on. Do we know how far along this is? What do we have a timeline? That
I'm not sure about the timeline as far as status. I know that the design was merged and he's starting to write code for it, but I'm not sure how far in he is.
okay? Okay. So that I keep running up against in working on the FADM stuff, running up against this because trying to make sure that the orchestrator's interface for spinning up collections of RGW daemons sort of maps onto what Greatest Gateway wants to do. And right now, Rook has all these silly assumptions like when you create an object store in Rook, it's you give it a name and that's the name of the realm and the zone, and that's it. And it's always isolated. There's no multi-site, whatever. Whereas the Orchestrator API lets you spin up basically collections of daemons that all share the same realm and zone. And actually added there's a subcluster thing too, so you can you can have multiple sets of daemons per zone if you want to, with slightly different configs or whatever. But they're just a bunch of sort of semi-arbitrary conventions built around that as far as like how the daemons are named and how the configs are managed and so on, just to make the SetADM stuff simple so that it's just focused on running the daemons and scheduling them and not on configuring anything. But this needs to be sort of merged with the Rook view of the world so that the orchestrator abstraction generalizes both of them and sort of hopefully works similarly across the two. So I think for me, one of the key things is make sure that that design matches what the orchestrator API is currently presenting, and that if there's a mismatch, that we plan those orchestrator abstraction changes and this matching SetADM changes, but it'll behave. I think it's especially true. I don't know if I'm not sure. I think that stuff that Ollie's doing is targeting somewhat of a subset of the full set of multi-site capabilities for RGW. I don't think is that right? Not necessarily attempting to be able to do everything.
Right. It doesn't expose any of the new kind of per bucket pipe stuff. Yehuda. It doesn't do sync modules yet. It doesn't do placement targets or storage classes. But
Okay.
I mean, I still think it's pretty complete.
Yeah. Okay. But I guess if I think the goal should be that if you're deploying with ideally either Rook or SFADM, but at least with SFADM, that the full set of capabilities are possible. And so the strategy I took is just with SFADM is just to like basically stay out of it, focus only on running collections of daemons for each zone. But what I really want to do is make sure that the developers who are working on this stuff are using it and understand how that orchestration API works, and ideally are using that in their development so that it's clear where there are points of friction or things that are just annoying and require many steps to set up or whatever it is. And actually just that the things are lined up. Like you mentioned earlier, you could have mentioned this idea of combining multiple zones into a single set of daemons. But the thing it just did with StepADM was that the RGWs are sort of grouped by zone. So I'm not sure what it would mean to have multiple zones within the same daemon if we need to break that already, or if it's going to be problematic or not.
Yeah, I don't think we've quite figured out the details there, though it's still a ways off. But we'll definitely have to think about it.
So there's a pull request that I just opened yesterday, actually, that adds a tool called cpatch and cstart. And it basically lets you build a container or patch a container based on your local build directory. It's basically just a cleaned up version of John's old kubejacker script from your build machine, and it takes like 30 seconds, 60 seconds to run. And then you can use that container for either Rook or StepADM. And then cstart is sort of a vstart equivalent, but vastly simplified, that just starts up a StepADM cluster. And so you can run cpatch and then StepADM to boot up like a fully normal cluster without any of the weird special cases that vstart has. And then use the real orchestration APIs and basically interact with the cluster the same way that a real user would. So my hope with that is that developers can use that, particularly when doing things like RGW multi-site, because then they're actually using the orchestration APIs to spin up the sets of RGW daemons, and they're using the real APIs, bigger multi-site and whatever it is. And hopefully that experience of testing all this stuff should be basically identical to what an end user is doing.
Very cool. Yeah.
Have it better.
For multi-site development, I mostly use our test_multi.py stuff, and that's built on a script called mstart, which wraps vstart to run it in a separate directory. So I think just kind of reframing the tests in terms of this new stuff be a good start.
Yeah. Yep, I think that makes sense. Right now, cstart, I was assuming that you'd want one per directory, but I guess you'd want multiple clusters in order to do it too. Anyway, I guess my hope is that if we can do this, then all this testing will be done driven through the orchestrator APIs instead of ad hoc developer scripts. Or at least the ad hoc developer scripts will be starting up the cluster and not actually doing. Yeah. Anyway, that has yet to merge, but hopefully we'll help out a little bit.
You need to have everything like running CentOS 7 or 8.
Yeah, right now, I mean, in theory, you can build everything inside a container inside a CentOS 8 container on top of any OS, but we need to like document how exactly to do that properly. On my dev machine for testing this, I just installed CentOS 8, so I wouldn't have to worry about it. But yeah, we'll probably want to do that. It might be that all those new dev machines that we just put in the lab, there are like 6 or 8 of them. Maybe we should just put CentOS 8 on most of them so that it matches the the container image, and there'll be a little bit less friction.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people are using those, but yeah, okay. S3 select. Where are we at with that?
Making quite a bit of progress. I think that we're close to having a first thing merge. Go
Is
ahead,
it
Yehuda.
or working on it?
Mostly Gal Solomon.
Gal, not or. Okay, sorry.
So it's a really big feature with a lot of surface area. So I think that we've picked some good kind of first targets in terms of data formats that we're going to support, the execution model, whether stuff runs on the OSDs or in RGW, and then just all of the dialect that we support, the different kinds of queries.
Mm-hmm. Is that targeting the Pacific time frame? Or at least the initial setup?
Absolutely, yeah. Some
Yeah,
subset
okay.
will definitely be there.
Okay. 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 Anything? What else? What else is on the plate for Pacific?
I know that there's still plans to rebase and merge the D3N caching stuff. Oh, there's
What
still
is it?
interest in it.
D3N? What is that?
That's the MOC cache project.
Okay. And it's called D3N?
I think so.
Is that still doing, that's the read-only cache of the tails? Or is it more sophisticated than that now?
I don't quite remember, honestly. It's been a little while and they've muted since then.
Okay.
But yeah, the cache piece I think was just the tails.
I wonder how much of this could, I mean, so there's the Ceph immutable object cache that Intel wrote that just, is it, just caches, just read-only copies of objects locally. It's used by RBD right now for the parent images. Be interesting to know if some of the work there for the D3N cache could also integrate with the immutable object cache, so you don't have like then two competing things that cache immutable objects.
I'll take a look. Yeah, that sounds good. As far as I know, they were just kind of naively caching things in with POSIX IO.
I mean, that's essentially what the Ceph immutable object cache does, and it's got a little bit of a scheduler in there, and it supports multiple processes. Nothing revolutionary, but
yeah. Well, if there's something there
if it could be merged in some way, I
working.
think that'd be great.
Cool. Yeah, I don't think that was the interesting kind of research part of the D3N project, and so having a good answer there is definitely helpful. So I'm kind of drawing a blank on other big projects. Abby, Yehuda, anything that I'm blanking on?
I think we covered all the big ones. There is alternative packet index scheme. Did we talk about that? Which is not.
Yeah, briefly. We talked about it in the Trello board. But yeah, Eric has been sidetracked and not working on that part. And kind of in parallel, Matt has been trying to build a prototype around B+ trees, which I think is promising. But yeah, I don't know if we can do either for Pacific.
Yeah. Okay.
Does the account work? But I hope that should be complete by Pacific.
Which stuff? Which work?
No, it's more of accounts and versus tenants and RGW S3.
Yeah, kind of reifying accounts as a management thing.
Any work that we want to do to Redis Gateway admin? Complete refactoring, integrate with a Ceph generic configuration, the CLI.
Yeah, rewrite it from scratch.
Rewrite from scratch.
So the item on my wish list here, I know I've talked to you about this. I'm not sure if I mentioned it to you, Casey. Would be basically that everything that's Rados Gateway admin foo would map to RGW, or maybe with some cleanup or whatever in the meantime, but just basically unify that entire interface with the existing Ceph CLI. And that could be, that could be anything from just a hack in the manager that basically just runs Rados Gateway admin on the manager node, or it could be, capturing it as a library with Python bindings and linking it into the module or whatever it is at any level of integration or elegance. But the end goal being to unify those two CLIs.
Yeah.
Sage, now you mentioned that, sorry, because I couldn't make the first part of the meeting. I saw that there was a discussion on the monitoring from the dashboard. Not sure if you already tackled that one or.
We basically tabled it because nobody from the dashboard team was there. So we can come back to that in a sec. I guess on the CLI thing, I'm not sure. I mean, partly I'm motivated just because it seems it sort of unifies the user experience. It seems tidier to me. But I know that the implementation, because of the way that things have evolved, is a little bit awkward to actually do it this way. So I don't know what the level of importance here is. But I think as an end goal, at least, this is something that we should keep in our minds as moving in this direction. It would make it easier for the orchestrator to do things like or to have simplified workflows for things like creating new zones and having the daemons, triggering the daemons being spun up and stuff automatically. I think the analogy here is that in CephFS, there's a whole new set of commands like cephfs volume new or create, I can't remember, ... where you create new CephFS volumes, and that just calls the orchestrator API and starts up the all the MDS daemons for you. So it's sort of a single step, and so it works both on Rook and on CephADM. It just everything comes up. And in contrast, right now with Rados Gateway, you have basically 3 or 4 Rados Gateway admin commands to create the realm, the zone group, the zone, ... and then finally you do CephForge, apply RGW, realm, zone, and then 2 daemons or whatever, and that actually starts the daemons. Possibly in here, there's some like ceph config set client.rgw.realm.zone ... to set a bunch of settings for it. So there's so many permutations here that it's hard to necessarily make this a one-step operation, but hopefully there's some opportunity to simplify things, I guess.
Yeah. But at the minimum, like I'd be happy if we could just start with cleaning up or Rados Gateway admin code, break it down into like 20 separate C files instead of one big main function, which is pretty embarrassing. And then do something with a command line parsing to separate it to different modules, and then we can probably find a way to integrate it with the orchestrator. One thing that we can do is right now is to find a way to put or run more than one command, Rados Gateway add command in a single command, so that you don't need to run 4 different commands, or at least the zone creation to make it also create a realm and a zone group. So at least make it so that the complexity of setting up a new zone is like 4 times easier than run 4 commands to do that.
Yeah. Right. Okay, so there are a whole bunch of other items on the Trello board here that it may or may not be stale. There's like a per zone scrub. That was added last year. There's a remote group. I don't know what that even means. About IAM policies.
Yeah, I think the group concept ties in with the STS projects.
Okay. RBD snapshot pseudo bucket. That's new. Jason looks like Jason just added that. Or no, I did last year. QoS profiles.
Yeah, I think this is the QoS stuff is still interesting. Don't have anybody working on it, and I think kind of further integration with Rados is not in yet.
Yeah. non-pausing bucket index resharding.
Yep, still interested, but this would be after any other reshard changes.
Okay.
I know that Mark wants that one.
Yeah. S3 bucket log API. This is. It looks like I added this 2 years ago.
I'm not sure that's something we want to strive for. Like specifically the S3 log API is not great. I haven't investigated it a bit. And unless we really hear from people that that's what they want, maybe we can provide something that is better than that.
Okay. The class log using arm range for trim. Did we? I think we did this already, right?
Yes,
USD might not actually do it because of RocksDB, but this part is done.
correct.
Okay.
Will become
S3 bucket
less of a
notification.
thing with the OMAP offload, though.
Right.
Bucket notifications we have. Yeah, it's PubSub, right?
Right. Off this card. Think from cloud. This is sort of post
future
zipper,
work.
I think, right? Optimizing object tag.
I don't know what optimize object tags is.
Move object tags.
Problem with open circular comment last year.
Yeah, my understanding was that this was adding tags in the bucket index so that we could do tag-based filtering there instead of in RGW, and that would show up for things like lifecycle processing.
Okay. Revisit object model manifest related. Move all objects to having manifest, not just multi-parts, and then explicitly putting them in a different pool.
All objects do have manifests. That's a straw man. But revisiting it, I would assume Zipper covers it.
Drop that one. And then mixed version cluster testing for multi-site. That presumably is good. And then cross-zone scrub.
There was another ticket that said basically the same. There was an external contributor that were working on it, and they haven't heard from them in a while. Right, Casey, have they? Do you hear anything about it ever since?
Sorry, about what specifically? The scrub stuff?
You there, Yehuda?
Yeah, the scrub stuff. You remember there was an external contributor that were working on it, or wanted to work in it.
I remember that there was interest from Flipkart. Prasad.
Yep.
I think Prasad is here.
Yeah, it's still in our interest list. And I think the ETAG verifier that you just approved sometime last week would do at least one level of scrubbing during full sync, although not being although not on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the first time we do a sync, we'll make sure that we are copying the data the way it was written into. And thereafter, on a continuous basis, it could be a PG scrub that would take care of it.
Okay. And then the last one here is collapse dupe requests.
I don't remember seeing this.
Like I added it. There must have been a customer case or something. I don't remember.
I don't know what it means. I can only assume that it means that if you have two requests to the same object, don't fetch the object twice.
Yeah, there's in the description, yeah. If multiple clients or the same client read the same object and there are Rados ops in flight, then wait for them instead of issuing more Rados ops.
Yeah, can probably do it in the lower Rados service layer.
Kind of depends on there being some sort of caching component, I think. That you could serve requests on the same data. Otherwise, it'd be sort of a kludge.
Yeah, well, if we know that we're gonna send a request that is already in flight, Rados, and it's a read request, then we can just wait for the response from Rados and then return the result that we got. Right. So we have that lower layer Rados object wrappers. We can build something on top of that instead of doing it at the top level, do it at the bottom level. So that would make sure that we don't then duplicate read requests while they're in flight. That doesn't necessarily cache. Like if two clients send those requests and the second arrives after the first one finishes, and we'll send it again, which I think is fine because
I don't know. I'm kind of wary of things like this in general, where it turns something that should be single-threaded into something that has to take locks and coordinate across threads.
Well, it already takes locks internally, right? Well, you can come up with with a specific use case and see if it works or not.
Does anybody remember what actually prompted this? It's from October. There must have been something that happened that made me add this card because this isn't normally something I'm paying attention to. Okay, customer incident or something. Anyway, okay. Okay, well, that's everything on the Trello board. So the things that are tagged for Pacific are S3 select, all the FIFO stuff, data sync optimizations, multi-site reshard, and just general asynchrony. Is that everything? I guess we don't have a card for that. Anything else that should go on this list?
I think the dashboard monitoring of multi-site definitely deserves a spot.
Yeah, okay. So maybe we should talk about that. Alfonso is here.
Yeah, talking about this issue, particularly the work that Alvin is involved on.
Yeah. So what's the current status of the dashboard work then?
Well, really, we were waiting for this. There is an open PR. I will there. But we were waiting for this in order to create some kind of monitoring overview about multi-site sync status info. I think it's a work in progress yet, study. And about the tracker issue that I put, I think there were some last question in the last comment. I don't know if, Casey, you can take a look when you have enough time for this.
Yeah, the question about the timestamp delta.
Yeah.
Right. The request would give you 2 timestamps, so the delta would just be the difference between those two. So yes.
Okay, I think Ernest is in another meeting, but okay, I will let him know. But okay, so provided we have this API endpoints of the admin API, we can move forward in our in our overview creation. Because for now the first goal is to have monitoring capabilities about regarding multi-site. There is also
so
go.
Yeah, I'm sorry that you guys have been blocked on APIs here, and progress has been slow. I wish. So I mean, the new API is just kind of a simplification or collapses a lot of different API requests into a single one. But all of the info that the dashboard needs is currently available in existing APIs. So maybe the best way to make progress is to write the dashboard side against those. But separately, there's also monitoring of the perf counters coming from sync that that you do have access to now and could make progress there.
Well, I think if you mean the perf counters, I think that we can consume from Prometheus and create some Grafana charts. There is also the goal of having a topology view, and I think that we can consume some API, admin API endpoints in order to provide a topology. So yeah, we will try to make progress with the perf counters and get some overview as soon as possible. But regarding your last comment, you mean that even without this ongoing PR, we can retrieve from the adminops API the same info, or more or less the same info?
Yeah. So there are REST APIs that will give you the status of a single shard of a single log. So the dashboard could query every shard from every zone and kind of correlate them and display them. The new APIs that we're proposing here expose one API that kind of does the per shard stuff itself. So it's more of a simplification than anything.
Yeah. No, I was. No, my concern is that if requesting every single shard of every zone, it can be expensive from the dashboard perspective. I think that the unified implementation can be more performant, right?
Not necessarily. I mean, we have to do the same work. If you do it in a single request, then it's simpler and less HTTP traffic, but less parallelism. So I don't know. There's a trade-off, I guess.
We will have a look at it then.
Yeah, I can share more details about the existing APIs, and we can talk about it on the tracker issue.
Okay, great.
Okay. Do we have anything else?
Just one thing. Need to get a better testing for the bucket granularity sync so that we can go out of experimental.
Yeah. Got a card for that. And along with that, a way to surface it through on the Kubernetes side, and also documentation, I guess, to go with it, all that, so that people.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Good to me. Do you have anything else, Casey?
Me too. A lot of good work here. I think that's a good summary.
Yeah. Just busy for a while. Cool. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sage.
Thank you. Bye bye.